Hello everyone, and thank you very much for having us this evening.
Right, so the first question is, we weren't expecting the Ballad of Smallhope and Pennyroyal,
No.
but suddenly it appeared. What happened?
I had one of those things that Saul had on the road to Damascus, not a donkey. In the same way that I thought one day about the time police, and I was writing a St Mary's book, and I thought, how irritating must St Mary's be to poor, hard-working time police officers. And I started thinking about Smallhope and Pennyroyal, and how did two such disparate characters even meet, let alone form an effective working partnership. And I started to put circumstances and things together and build characters and backgrounds. And I was supposed to be writing Time Police 6 at the time, and Bad Moon as well. And I thought, well, I'll just jot down a few notes and see how it goes. And then I can put it aside, and I won't have forgotten them when the time comes to start writing the book. And I found that was quite difficult to do, and I found I was actually writing the book. So I got hold of my lovely editor and said, how would you like a short story about Smallhope and Pennyroyal? And she said, oh, yes, lovely, thank you. So I thought, well, I'll just do a short story, it won't take more than a few weeks. So I scribbled away, and then I got hold of Frankie again and said, it's going to be about 30,000 words plus. Is that all right? And she said, yes, that's fine. So I scribbled away again for ages. I couldn't stop. I honestly couldn't stop. And I got hold of Frankie and I said, we're probably looking at about 60,000 words. And she said, that's fine, novella, not a problem. We can do a novella. And when I finally finished writing, it was about 130,000 words. The longest short story in the world, I like to think. And here it is. I honestly couldn't stop writing it. Everything else just got put away. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with good ideas about this, that and the other, how to resolve this bit of plot, what happened after that. And really, I believe I was quite unpleasant to live with at the time. And the result is Smallhope and Pennyroyal, a book which I absolutely loved to write. And I love all my books, obviously. But writing this one was a bit like writing just one damn thing all over again. I honestly had no idea what would happen next. It's utterly outrageous. Anybody who is looking for realism, please don't look here. And I gave myself permission to be as outrageous as I could possibly be. And that's the result, and I hope very much that you enjoy it.
I think looking at the reviews we've already had on NetGalley and things like that, people are very much enjoying it already. So we've met these characters already in a couple of your books, but are they goodies or are they baddies? Smallhope.
They have their own morals. They are very moral, but they are their morals and not other people's morals. There are things that they wouldn't do for all the money in the world. You couldn't pay them to do some things. Some things they'll do for free. Some things they'll do because they feel like it, and some things they won't do because they feel like it. They are their own people. They work for the time police in an oblique kind of way. They get involved with St Mary's adventures as well. They are fiercely loyal to each other. Each other comes first. But whether they're good or whether they're bad, I don't know. Read the book and tell me what you think.
Excellent. Do you have a favourite of the two characters?
I do. I shouldn't say this. And when I started writing, obviously it was Smallhope because she's female, I'm female. I had a lot of fun with her and I felt we knew each other quite well. But by the time I got to the end of the book, we all have a bad boy, don't we? And he is a bit of a bad boy. But yeah, I have got a favourite.
He's a bad boy with 12 diplomas though, isn't he?
He has 12 diplomas from Butler School. I have a lot of fun with this. He went to Butler School and Smallhope goes to a very expensive finishing school, I think in Switzerland, where she fails everything completely, and is a bit of a bad girl. And she especially fails floral art, at which she is absolutely useless. Pennyroyal graduated with honours from Butler School with diplomas in concierge services and hospitality and diplomacy and floral art, much to Smallhope's disgust. And there's several occasions in the book when they're in the middle of a gun battle and she will actually turn to him and say, seriously, floral art? You have a diploma in floral art? And he will fire off a round of ammunition and turn to her and say, well, don't you? And it's a lovely joke that runs through. I suspect if I write another book, I'm actually going to have to go into more detail as to exactly what he got up to at Butler School that got him his 12 diplomas.
Well, that's a good question. Another book. Is this a standalone or the start of a series?
I don't know at the moment. I never say never. As you know, I have difficulty committing myself.
Yes, you do.
To pretty much anything. I have notes.
Okay. The cover is, I think, particularly lovely.
It's very strokeable,
for this,
isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, there will be stroking. Just try to stroke your own is all I can say. So it is a stunning cover. Can you talk us a little bit through the process of designing the cover?
Well, peacocks are very important. So when I was thinking about the cover, because headline are very good, I get asked my opinion on what sort of cover I'd like, what I'd like to see, etc. And we work together all the way through. And my sister-in-law is a very gifted graphic artist. So I told her what the story was. And I said, peacocks are very important. I want peacock theme for the cover. And she came up with the first draft in a lovely peacock colour. And we sent it off to Headline, who took that and ran with it and came up with the playing card theme, you know, with one facing one way and one facing another. I forget whose idea the bullet holes were, but I was very enthusiastic about the bullet holes. And in fact, my original cover had bullet holes from top to bottom and all the way across the cover as well. It looked like a major gun battle, quite honestly. And I think I was taken away and calmed down and given to understand that 2 would probably be quite sufficient. But it's beautiful, isn't it?
I think it really is very stunning, very stylish, and very different to your other ones, but still keeping somehow in the theme of it as well. As part of the book, I think the crown jewels are at risk now that Amelia Smallhope has had a look at them. Are they safe?
They are for the moment, until I can get a visit to the Tower of London and get up into the jewel room and actually have a look at what's feasible. I need to know the dimensions, I need to know the ins and outs. And I've asked, but I've been given to understand it's very unlikely they'll let me have a set of blueprints. Which is a shame, because I could have done a lot with those.
Google history must be amazing.
My family's under strict instructions to delete my browser history the instant I take my last breath. They're to step over the corpse, grab hold of my laptop and delete the lot before anybody turns up. And in all the time I lived in Turkey, I cannot believe that the police never turned up to investigate some of the things that I was how to make a flower bomb, all sorts of things about mining and detonation and explosion, how to overrun a country, and this was Turkey, and they're probably still looking for me.
I'm sure everyone else has more questions about Smallhope and Pennyroyal and any of your other books, but shall we have a reading first and then we can open it up to the audience?
This is Smallhope and Pennyroyal. They've been together for some time. They've learned to work with each other. They are achieving a reputation for being efficient, quick and getting the job done. They do work for the Time Police, and occasionally they work with other bounty hunters as well. Despite my brave boast, my own social life was somewhat barren. Well, non-existent actually. Normally this wasn't a problem, if only because between work and training, I was too knackered to go clubbing until the small hours. I didn't really have the energy for anything more strenuous than the occasional margarita in the pear tree on the corner. And then I met Kester DiMaggio. We'd been assigned a couple of big jobs from the time police around this time, one of which turned out to have exciting repercussions, for me anyway. Pennyroyal, slightly less so. We were involved in bringing down a really quite well-organised professional setup dealing in black market historical artefacts. No guesses as to how they acquired those. That sort of thing can be very lucrative. There's a massive market for one of Good Queen Bess's fans or a Leonardo sketch, and you'd be amazed at the prices they can fetch. Because this was such a big job, we were working in conjunction with other recovery agents, one of whom I only met when it was all nearly over, Kester DiMaggio. Pennyroyal and I had spent a couple of weeks on this job, keeping our targets under surveillance, identifying key people, and discovering the location of their pods and their warehouse. Then we all moved in simultaneously. The operation was a success, and you wouldn't believe the stuff these people had stashed away. 2 warehouses near Regent's Canal, which was how they got the stuff in and out, stuffed to the rafters with what normal people would call treasure, and the time police would refer to as evidence. If you ever wondered what became of Drake's drum, I can tell you where it ended up. The whole place was an Aladdin's cave of wonder. And there was the occasional very good fake, cleverly mixed in with the real deal. A brilliantly forged round table, for instance. Well, 6 of them, actually, all laid out along one wall. Someone had obviously done their historical research, and there was just enough detail for maximum authenticity. Ancient wood, the faint traces of different coloured paint denoting each knight's name, just the occasional dim outline of a few letters, the Thur in Arthur, the X in Rex, the Veer in Bedivere, and so on. They were really well done. I said to Pennyroyal afterwards, when he was speaking to me again, that we should make the effort to discover who had created them, because he or she produced quality work which might come in useful to us later on. Anyway, we secured the premises, the pods, and those of their key people all in one go. And when everyone had been rounded up and disarmed, and things had calmed down a little, I found myself face to face with fellow bounty hunter Kester DiMaggio. The attraction was mutual. He was a few years older than me and big, blonde and bumptious. I've always had a weakness for big men, and he was very, very big, if you get my drift. I shut down my blaster, he shut down his, and we smiled at each other for a while, and then a little while longer. "I'll just secure the prisoners all by myself, shall I?" said Pennyroyal. "You know, actually complete the job." I said. "Kester," said Kester, smiling at me some more. "Amelia." Someone behind me sighed very loudly. "Pleased to meet you," said Kester. "Likewise." I didn't know Pennyroyal had an assistant. "He doesn't," I said, scowling and very keen to correct this erroneous assumption, "but I do." "I seem to have used all my zip ties," said Pennyroyal behind me. "Perhaps that's because I'm the one doing all the work." Without taking my eyes off Kester, I pulled out 6 ties and held them out to him. "Here." There followed the sounds of prisoners being restrained rather more vigorously than was probably absolutely necessary. "All finished here. Time to go. Now." "So," said Kester, adopting a somewhat over-dramatic pose and shaking back his blonde tresses. "You doing anything tonight?" He smiled slowly. "Amelia?" Pennyroyal coughed. Did I say now? Even I wasn't desperate enough to say I was free at such short notice. I smiled up at Kester. Yes, I am. Sorry. Doing something tonight, I mean. Shame, he said, but hardly surprising. What about tomorrow night? No, said Pennyroyal pointedly. Not asking you, said Kester shortly. She's busy, said Pennyroyal. We've got weapons inventory, an hour's self-defense practice, followed by, I'm free, I said, smiling. I gave it a heartbeat and then said, what exactly did you have in mind? Pennyroyal slung someone into the pod. There was a faint cry of pain. Oh, said Kester, still grinning that grin. Just a quiet dinner in a little place where they know me. One of the prisoners was protesting that his ties were too tight. And then perhaps we could look in at that new club down by the river. I've never been to a nightclub, though I certainly wouldn't be telling anyone that. Sounds great. Hands have gone numb. Pennyroyal was still droning on, followed by an hour's practice at the shooting range and a weapons familiarisation session, followed by pins and needles. And then perhaps a little stroll along the embankment to look at the lights reflected in the river. Kester looked down at me. So pretty. I smiled back. That sounds absolutely perfect. Restocking the pod and doing the laundry, finished Pennyroyal, who had his own ideas about how to show a girl a good time. We both ignored him. Pick you up at 7, said Kester. We'll eat early if you like. Beat the rush. Good idea. See you then. Looking forward to it. He smiled, tossing back his long blonde hair yet again. Lost all feeling in my hands. Kester disappeared. I watched him go and then turned to Pennyroyal, noting, to my surprise, that he appeared to have secured our prisoners and loaded them all in the pod without me. You're welcome, he said when I mentioned this. No problems at all. Happy to assist you with your love life at any time. I was quite surprised. Really? You don't look that happy. Just get in the pod. Fingers gone blue. Thank you very much.
That was great, well done, thank you. Right, who's got some questions then?
You're saying that you've got some notes for possibly many more books. Just putting that out there. So
I'm pretty sure I didn't put it quite right.
Is that how you work? Is it you fling lots of things at the page? This is a short story of 30,000 and it grew. So you don't start off knowing the end of your book.
I like to know the end. I'm not always sure what's going to happen or how they're going to get there, but I do feel quite insecure if I don't actually know the end, because then all I've got to do is get them there. I have started books. That one I didn't know how it was going to end, because it was just going to be a short story and they were going to meet, and I'd leave it all vague and hint at future adventures, and that would be it. This is what happens if I don't know the ending to a book in advance. I know some authors like to meticulously plot everything out, and they know how their characters are going to behave. But Markham owes his existence to me thinking to myself one day, Max and Peterson were giving a briefing and Markham was going, and they were wondering whether to dumb it down a little bit for him, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if Markham knew more than they did, actually? And then the next briefing again, he knew more than they did, and slowly over the books he developed into a kind of superhero where he could do anything. And then I started thinking, well, I'm going to have, he's got to have some sort of really special identity, because I've really built him up and he can't just be an ordinary person. So that was how Markham ended up being who he was, but he wasn't that person when I first started writing. So yeah, fling a lot of words at a page and see what sticks.
You don't tend to write in a linear fashion, do you?
No, I don't, because my brain doesn't work like that. I see a scene and I write it down, and then I have to work that scene in and stitch it all together with the rest of it. And sometimes in the first draft, which is a horrendous jumble, the same scene appears in several places because I can't decide which part of the book it would have the most impact in. So, you know, I think, oh, I'm doing quite well. I've got 90,000 words, but by the time I've taken the same scene out that's in there 4 times, I've only got about 30,000 words, and I'm not doing as well as I thought I was.
Is it all the same book, or are you writing?
No, I write
Elizabeth
several
Kent all
books
at the same time?
simultaneously.
Sorry.
Because it's like a holiday. You know, if I get stuck on one, I can move to another. And it's a different style and it's different characters. And then I get stuck, so I move back to the first one. So really, my desk is just a whole pile of stuck books. And I just move from one to the other.
Another question, please.
I've noticed that a lot of the miscreants lately have been able to steal things from the past, and I was wondering if it's actually only St Mary's who are still following the rules in that regard.
Yes, it is. The pods have to be adjusted, and Pennyroyal and Smallhope, who have acquired a pod, have to make certain adjustments to it to allow them to function as bounty hunters. St Mary's operate under considerably more rules than just about anyone else, and the Time Police, of course, just do as they please all over the place.
My question, a good one to follow up to my one. If you could acquire any historical artifact with no repercussions, what would it be?
Oh, good question.
Oh, now you've done it, haven't you? I think I would like the round table, because that would open up so many interesting areas of exploration. So if I could have the real, genuine round table with all the implications, then yeah, I think I'd be quite happy. I'm probably quite rich as well. But yes.
What I've been wondering is, where do you, in all the history of all the world, how do you pick the ones that you weave into a book, and how much license do you take with the history? Because I've been like, some of the things I didn't know about, so I've been like busy Googling, going, oh, I didn't know about that, and you know, I'm just really fascinated by the, I know that makes me sound a bit nerdy, I do enjoy the humour bit, but I love the history as well.
Well, initially I was just picking my favourite historical events, the ones I knew things about. But of course there's been a lot of books now, and there's usually 4 or 5 events in each book, so I'm fast running out of things I know about. So I'm having to do a lot of frantic reading and studying as well. I would never have the Saxons winning at the Battle of Hastings or anything like that. Troy will always fall. Edward II will always have his red hot poker moment at Berkeley Castle, because they are fixed key points in history. For Troy, I did take some license. I've never really believed in Helen of Troy. I don't think women were that important enough to go to war, to abandon your kingdom for 10 years to anybody who happened to be passing, simply to get Menelaus' wife back. I can't see that. Women weren't that important. I think it was about trade routes, because Troy was on the Bosphorus and they levied a tax for every ship that passed in and out. And I think that's what Agamemnon had his eyes on. And I don't think there was a wooden horse either, because there wasn't the wood, to be perfectly honest. If they'd been there for 10 years, there wouldn't have been a living stick of anything for miles and miles around. So I took the liberty of writing about Troy and the fall of Troy without actually including Helen or the wooden horse.
And this lady here had a question.
I just was wondering, are there going to be more St Mary's books? Because the last book felt like they were wrapping up.
No, I wanted to go off and do some other stuff, small Time Police stuff, and I had some standalone books that I stupidly thought I might have time to write. So I was going to leave St Mary's for a while, but I wanted to leave them in a good place. So, you know, they're at the moment peaceful, happy, everything's going mostly okay, nothing's on fire, no one's dead. So I felt I could leave them for a year or so, but there will be another St Mary's book. I've got some notes for it.
And hopefully Max will pop up in the Time Police every now and again, because I love her.
Max is popping up in Time Police 6. In fact, she's had a very unfortunate effect on events, because I did feel that Varma and Max were just too good a partnership to leave alone. So once again, reluctantly, they are partners, and they're squabbling their way through yet another dreadful crisis.
Would one of these standalone books be along the lines of the Bachelor establishment? You said once you were...
It could be. I have some thoughts for a sequel that... Yes, I've got there's a thriller and more Elizabeth Cage and just things I want to write. I'm conscious of time slipping away and I'm writing faster and faster. Get as much as I can. There's lots I want to say on paper, so fingers crossed I'm spared.
You're also working with the film production company, aren't you, on Bachelor Establishment?
Yes, they're quite interested in a Bachelor establishment. They asked me a couple of months ago. I went down here to visit them, and we worked on, you'll have to excuse me, I'm so proud, I've mastered the lingo. We worked on the treatment, which is just a fancy word for a kind of preliminary script meetings. Just getting the story sorted out, because it's actually quite a slight book and it's not very long, and the people who were interested said, well, we would quite like to develop the mystery of who shot Eleanor and why. So we were working on that, and it's not actually easy because the framework of the story already existed. Nobody wanted to change that, so somehow we had to fit quite a sizable segment in that didn't disturb the existing story, if that makes sense. But it was enormous fun. I worked really hard. I was on my knees at the end of it. But the best bit is they write on the walls. It's creative, and there's this stuff called magic whiteboard, and it sticks to the wall with static. Yeah. And you can you hold it up, and it attaches itself to the wall like an alien. And then you can write all over the wall, and it's fabulous. And now I've been completely contaminated. So if you visit my flat, every available scrap of wall now has magic whiteboard on it with notes, and I've actually created an entire building, a library actually. I've created an entire library. I'm quite proud of myself, and it works too. It's a proper living, working library that I made. But it's a bit of a surprise to people who pop round to say hello, and there are all these library blueprints across the walls.
Is the library in Time Police 6?
Yes, it is.
Ooh.
Yes. And I might even publish the walls. You'll have to wait for them to come out in paperback.
Your characters have such fantastic names. I wonder how you come up with them.
They just come to me. What usually happens is I start to write, and as I write, the name comes out of my pen. If I can't get the character name right, and it does happen occasionally, the character themselves isn't right. And I forget which character it was, but it was quite a major one in one of the books, and I'm sorry I can't remember, but I couldn't get it right, and I couldn't get the character right, and it wasn't until I found a name and I thought, yes, that will do. Martin Gaunt. That was who it was. I wanted a name that was sinister and unpleasant, and it took me ages to come up with Gaunt, which I thought summed him up very well because he was quite an unpleasant person. But until I got the name right, I couldn't get the character right. And as soon as I thought Martin Gaunt, I saw him, you know, tall, thin, skeletal, unpleasant, nasty. Yes, and I was away then. But it took me ages to get the name right.
Obviously you have lots of incidental characters throughout the books. You have some great fun with them, some of them bigger than others, some recur. Obviously I love William Hendred, I'm sure everybody else does. But one, not necessarily my favourite and interesting character was Ronan. Obviously he's gone, but he hasn't gone because time's fluid. So is there always the opportunity for people who are dead to actually come back in the future?
Yes, because if they died, say, age 60, but at age 40 they jumped forward 100 years, then I can't do the maths, but some years after their death, they're going to be around again. And I always think of them as time bombs, and there is a very good possibility that Clive Ronan has left a time bomb or two lying around, in which he will either appear personally or will have influenced events in some way. Something I need to think about.
That's something you can't do in most books, but only in time travel books. We don't call it
I
time
think
travel.
somebody said, I never believe a character of Jodi Taylor's is dead until they were all actually peering at the body.
You do love killing them off, though, don't you?
Such fun. And I'm thinking, you know, it's quite some time since I had a cold.
I thought you just got talked out of killing someone.
I'm oscillating. Yeah, because the person pointed out to me that if that character died, then that was the end of that character. I don't know. I always liken it. Years and years ago, I saw an episode of Emmerdale Farm where everybody was getting on a bus, and you knew the bus was going to crash, and they were having a major cull of characters, so they could send. It was Emmerdale Farm at the time, and they were going to rebrand it Emmerdale and zhuzh it up a bit, and consequently, loads and loads of characters had to die, and they were all getting on the bus to go down into town, and the bus wasn't going to make it. It was great fun actually, because there were people saying, oh, I've got to go and catch the bus, and then missing it, so they'd be reprieved. And then a dearly loved character would say, oh, well, I wasn't going to go into town today, but I will because the bus is here. Climb on the bus and instant oblivion. And I always think of it as like that, you know, it's the equivalent of the Emmerdale Farm bus trip. There is something wrong with me.
Another question?
What's the favourite death you've actually done so far in any of your books? Which one
Oh,
have you enjoyed most?
The one I enjoyed most was Clive Ronan and his dreadful, messy, violent, thoroughly unpleasant end. Oh God, that was good. I felt quite invigorated after that. Yes, I enjoyed that one because I was able to use my imagination, because, you know, lots of people appear with themselves in the same time, but I've said, no, you can't do that. And I'd spent so many books saying you can't do it because the consequences will be terrible. I felt I owed it to my readers to have some truly terrible consequences for them to enjoy. So it's your fault.
Is there a historical event that if it was possible to do so, you would go back and change the outcome, damn the consequences? Yeah, I think I would change the outcome of the Battle of Hastings. We should have won. Seriously, everybody with Saxon legs, we should have won.
How do you know if you've got Saxon legs?
Your leg is longer from your hip to your knee than your knee to your ankle bone. If you have Norman legs, then this bit is shorter than that bit. And if you have Saxon legs, this bit is longer than that bit.
I wouldn't be there.
Would you not? Are you Norman?
William the Conqueror's my 35th great-grandfather.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. I'm pretty sure he would have gone off and conquered somewhere else, because expanding Norway was vital to him. He couldn't stay where he was because the King of France was after him, wasn't he? He had to expand. And I think if he hadn't had Britain, he might have gone for Ireland. But I think if Harold hadn't gone fishing that day and been shipwrecked, the whole of history would have been different. If he hadn't been shipwrecked on that day, none of that would ever have happened, because he wouldn't have had to swear the oath. Yes. So William wouldn't have had the Pope and all the reinforcements on his side. So yeah, the idiot went fishing.
That was one of the things that you were hoping for when you started writing the St Mary's series, wasn't it? That you would inspire a love of history.
Yes. I did my A-levels in my 40s because why not? And the head teacher came round one evening, it was evening classes, and he said, you've all got to make sure you pass, because we're not doing the humanities as night classes anymore. It's all going to be IT courses. The government's given us a grant and we're getting rid of night classes and it's all going to be IT. And really, without any due cause, I was quite enraged by this. And I brooded for years. And when I started to write, I don't know, I think I had some stupid idea. The history was supposed to be the important thing, and St Mary's was just the mechanism to get them there. And I think I had this idea that I would single-handedly revive an interest in history. And of course that was never going to happen. But an astonishing number of people do write to me and say, you've kindled my love of history. I went off and I looked up this and I looked up that and I researched that. And that's really nice, because I think history is important, because if you don't know where you've come from, how do you know where you're going? And how do you know which way you're facing? And if we learn from it a little bit more, we might not be so stupid as we all are at the moment, actually.
History used to bore me until I started reading your books.
Really?
I was the same.
I used to fall asleep
when I was the same. I think for me it was a mix of good teacher and mother here getting me on Jodi Taylor.
The problem I had was that when I got to secondary school, we did the Romans, we did the ancient Greeks, and the Vikings, and everything was interesting. And then I got to 14 and we started, because I'm old, we started on our O-level work. And all the good stuff went straight out of the window. And the education authorities, here they are faced with a bunch of teenagers for whom sex, drugs and rock and roll are the things uppermost in our minds. And the education authorities say, oh, well, right, well, we'll give them the Industrial Revolution, the Corn Laws, the Poor Laws, animal husbandry. That'll kindle an interest in history for them. And of course, it doesn't. I mean, it was just dreadful. It's a massive conspiracy to make it as dull as possible. Yeah.
Actually, that makes me feel really privileged, because I
Any more questions? Yes.
I really like Commander Hay, and I'd like to know a bit more about her backstory. I wondered if there's any possibility.
There is. I'm writing it at the moment. And another 130,000 words. No, it's in Time Police 6 at the moment, and her character has a lot happened to her, and I'm not saying any more.
I think Time Police 6 has a title now.
Yes, I think it does.
Out of Time?
Yes, Out of Time.
Yes, we must start calling it Out of Time.
Yes, sorry, for me it's been Time Police 6 for so long, but I think it's going to be called Out of Time.
You said St Mary's has been options. Do you have a dream casting for Max, dead or alive?
The only person I would truly like to see who I think would be perfect for the role is Bill Nye for Professor Rapson. I think he'd be sensational, actually. He's one of my favourite actors, and he's good in everything as well.
If you could play any part in it, who would you play?
I think, 6 months ago I'd have said Max, but now I think I might say Smallhope, because she has no problems. There is nothing she cannot overcome. Oh God, if only. That would be so nice.
Do we have any more questions?
Some time ago, you said in your blog that you'd written a piece about the wrestlers in the tower and then you lost it.
Yes.
Did you find it?
No.
So you sorry.
No, actually it turned out to be a really good thing, because the bit that I lost was not what eventually ended up happening to Markham. Because I'd lost it, I had to sit down and rewrite it, and that was when I suddenly thought, aha. And I did actually run it by one of my previous editors, and she was quite horrified and said, no, you can't possibly do that. So I tucked it away again, but then I was pimped out. Trafficked.
You've upgraded to headline.
I upgraded to headline. I must remember that. Can you write it down? And they were enormously enthusiastic and supportive about it. So I thought, yep, let's go ahead and do it. So actually losing the original 20,000 words turned out to be a really good thing. because the original version wasn't half as interesting as what I eventually came up with.
So the next St Mary's book, you've said you've got notes for.
Yes.
The title, you've also said the final book will be called An Honour and a Privilege.
Yes.
What's the title of this next book?
I have no idea.
But it's not An Honour and a Privilege.
No.
Excellent.
Well, I might actually write a book called An Honour and a Privilege and have it published after my death. And then I can write a prologue which begins, I am speaking to you from beyond the grave. Because who wouldn't want to do that? Work for Agatha Christie.
Anyway, any more questions? Oh, one at the back. Better make this the last
Yes.
one.
I love the banter in the books. Is that the kind of banter you have with your friends and family?
She is so funny, she could write a shopping list that would make you laugh. She is naturally very funny.
Yes, to some extent. A lot of it, I was in the Air Force, and people do talk to each other like that. In fact, the ruder they are to you, the more they like you. Always beware the person who says, oh hi, it's lovely to see you, you look fantastic today. Beware that person. So, yeah.
Right. Well, I'd like to say a big thank you to the Battersea Bookshop staff. Thank you so much for hosting us here. Thank you everyone for coming.